Alright everybody, we're going to be playing some Forza Horizon 4 today. Going to be discussing a little bit about how to be a better driver. We'll get right into it. Alright, so first we're just going to jump into just one of these races here, just for the sake of it. Get some stuff done while I'm discussing some things. Now, people make a lot of mistakes while playing Forza, especially in these Horizon games. It's a very open world, so a lot of times people just kind of assume they can go wherever, drive however, and it won't really matter, you know, because it's free, you know. Like I can go drive over here in this supercar if I wanted to, you know. It's whatever. I'm just driving along in the snow in an Aston Martin. Doesn't really matter where I go. Kind of just follow my own path, which is good and all. But when you're in an actual race online, you want to try and follow the best line that you can for racing. And one of the best ways to actually learn how to follow your own line is drive slower cars. I've noticed, like for me, I've been playing Forza for a long time. It's kind of, at this point, it doesn't really matter what I drive. But like, when you drive, don't just go out there and drive the fastest Lamborghini, Ferrari, whatever suits your fancy. You don't want to drive just the fastest thing out there. You're not going to learn that way. It's gonna get out of control. You're gonna have a hard time driving the car, and you're just not gonna have a good time. So what you want to do is you want to start out with cars that have relatively low power, that are easy to handle. You know, simple cars like everybody talks about in real life cars. You know, starting out with something like a Miata, right? It's an easy car to work with. It's an easy car to work with, and you can learn a lot from it because it can't get you into trouble that easily. When you're driving a supercar, you know, you're going 200 plus miles an hour, at least in this game. You know, a turn comes up on you a lot faster than if you're going 70, 80 miles an hour, which, depending on how you tune a Miata or something similar, you know, will change how your speed is going into turns and whatnot. Now it looks like we're doing a S-Class rally race here of some sort in the trial. I went with the RS200 just because I love this car. I drive it all the time whenever I can for rally races. It's really good in S-Class, fantastic car. So let's see how this goes. You know, rally races are a little bit different than street races, so there's some different rules that you have to follow with them. You know, you're not really following the same lines as you would in a street race per se, but let's get into it. So I like to always get rid of that. Naturally hitting somebody right off the bat. But yeah, starting off in a slower car really helps you kind of learn the ins and outs of the game mechanics as good as you can. That way you don't get too ahead of yourself, the car doesn't get out of your control, and you can kind of just do things however is comfortable for you, you know. If things start getting out of control, go to a slower car. You know, say you start in an A class, and A class is too fast for you, then jump down to a B class or even a C class. You know, starting with slower cars really helps you get a feel for how the game works. And I know for me personally, right, like I can drive an S2 class car in this game. It's challenging, yeah, more challenging than, you know, a C or a B class, something like that, but it's, once you know how to drive the slower cars, you'll know how to drive the faster cars, and you'll be able to predict things more easily. Now, one of the biggest things in rally races is instead of like braking in a turn, you try and handbrake turns, basically drifting, because you're setting your car, you're aligning the car to come out of the turn straight. You power through it coming out of the turn. Like this, watch. So the car goes sideways, the car is always straight. You come in through here, car is always straight. I'm not braking for the turn. Brakes don't really work as effectively in rally races, so basically I'm just drifting the whole way. And sometimes, you know, drifting can get a little bit out of hand. People will pass you. It's fine. So you're starting out with slower cars, and if you're new to the game, one of the things that I recommend for new players is turn on your driving line. Like I have my braking line on just because for me it's hard to tell, you know, distance and speed and all that because it's kind of like it's an arcade style game. So you can't really tell as easily braking distances. You don't have that feel of like, oh shit, I'm going too fast. You know, you can't really judge those kind of things as well. But definitely turning on that driving line is going to help you out a lot. It's going to tell you kind of where you're supposed to be at and help you get to those places. It'll make your turns better, and if you're able to turn better, you're going to drive better overall. Like somebody might have 800 horsepower in their A-class car, but they won't necessarily be able to turn sometimes, you know. Your 200 horsepower car, or even, you know, less than that can turn really well, can actually blow past people, especially in, you know, more circuit style racing. Obviously, races that have more straightaways, they're probably going to win, but that it all depends. But once you learn to turn, you'll race better, you'll feel better, you'll be more confident, you'll be able to kind of judge things, you know, like braking later than the person next to you or behind you or whatever. And you'll be able to make the turns even better than the game tells you you can. You know, sometimes I find myself braking once the bar already starts going red, and it's perfectly fine. But one of the things that a lot of people mess up on in this game is they apply full braking pressure immediately. When you do that, you're going to lock up the brakes. When you lock up the brakes, you're going to slide through the turns, and you're going to be wondering why you're sliding through the turns. Well, it's because you locked up the brakes. You know, like you can see when I go into turns, I don't have smoke coming out of my wheels. That's because I'm not locking up my brakes. I don't have anything other than like my braking power. I'm using an Xbox One controller, so it might be different if you're using a PlayStation controller or whatever. Obviously, you have different levels of like your motion of travel with the triggers and whatnot. If you're using like a pedal set, you're gonna have different levels of control over somebody with a controller. But yeah, learning how much pressure you need to apply for corners, for braking, really will help you out a lot in making those turns more efficiently. Because you're not like, watch this. So I'm locking up my brakes right now. It basically just locks the car completely. And one of the ways that you can kind of prevent yourself from locking up the brakes, if you know that you're one to just kind of grab the trigger or, you know, step on the pedal or whatever. If you know you're one of those types of people, change your braking force. A lot of people like to increase their braking force so that they can just tap the trigger and they're basically locking up the brakes already. But I decreased mine probably to around 75 to 85%, somewhere in that range, so that I don't lock up my brakes as easily. It's a little bit different with rally races. With rally races, I like to have more braking pressure because in the dirt your brakes are less effective. So you kind of want them to work better if you need to use them. But for street racing, I like to keep it between 75 and 85%. Another common mistake that some newbies will do is they'll kind of stay towards the middle of the track instead of using like the corners like you saw me do there. Like don't just like stay in the middle of the track all the time. Use the edges as you need to. You know, if you have to cut through some areas, especially in Horizon, it's different than it is in Motorsport. You know, cutting corners in motorsport is kind of frowned upon, but in Horizon, you know, like a rally race like this, or it's more lenient, simply because the racing style is a little bit more relaxed. But you wanna get as close as you can to certain corners. Try not to stay just in the middle. You know, use the outer edges. Like if you know a turn's coming up, get to that side. Get to whatever side is opposite of that turn beforehand. So you don't so you can prepare for the turn. But one more thing that I'd like to suggest is turn your assists off. It makes you a faster driver overall. The less assists you have on, the better you can control your car manually. The more control you'll have over the car, and the faster you'll be able to be once you get better. And if you start that out early, obviously, you're going to be able to drive better later on. So definitely turn those assists off. Obviously, leave the braking line on. With things like ABS, traction control, stability control, turn all that stuff off. I know with rear-wheel drive cars in this game, it can get pretty awful, simply because the tire models that they have in this game are not the greatest. They are very spinny. They like to spin out the tires in rear-wheel drive cars more so than they would actually do in real life. Which, you know, it's fine. It's an arcade-style game, but it kind of takes away from the playability. You have to have better throttle control to use rear-wheel drive cars. And that's why most people end up going with all-wheel drive. They'll, all-wheel drive swap everything, which I'm guilty of, I definitely do that. But I can also tune my all-wheel drive car to be front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive based on what my differential tuning settings are at. So that's another reason I go for that. The added weight for me is really just, it's necessary to be able to do well in this game, especially considering that a lot of the driving in this game is, partially off-road, since it's not a track race game, Yeah, definitely turn those assists off. It'll help you get better. Driving with friends is a great way to learn how to play the game, Like I've had a few friends that just recently started playing this game, even though it's been out for a couple of years now. And I help teach them how to play. Even some people that have been playing this game before, before I even met them too. I've helped some of them to learn how to play a little bit better, Learning how to tune cars obviously helps with that, learning what upgrades to put into things, not so much even the specific tunings, just the overall upgrades, what you put into things, You don't want to just put in only engine upgrades, because then you're not going to be able to turn. It's more trying to figure out a good balance of things. And I've helped them do those, learn stuff like that in the past. So playing with friends that are experienced, can definitely help you get better. If you don't have any friends that play this game, there's plenty of communities, clans and whatnot that they've got in the game. I'm not currently a part of any clan or anything like that, but I know there's some big groups out there. I forget what the actual term they use for it in this game is, but there's some pretty big groups out there, and I'm sure, the car community, the people that play this game, they're all willing to help you get better, because they want to see you do better so that you can help the clan or whatever you're doing do better as well. It looks like we lost this one. Had a couple of teammates that came in behind all the AI. It's never a good thing. But I'd say of all the biggest tips, tricks, and stuff for simply just playing the game, the ones that I've discussed already are definitely the biggest ones. Start out with something slower. turn your driving line on, turn your other assists off so that you can get better, faster, and and be better in the future than you would be if you had them on, and you'd have to learn how to play with them off after you already learned how to play the game. Playing with friends. But those are mainly the biggest things that I've got for how to play this game. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.